If you guys have never come across the Forearm Fables YouTube channel, they just put out an entire podcast where Devin and Auden discuss the King of the Table 10 event, so make sure to go check that out. But at one point in this podcast, Auden talks about why and how he was able to defeat arm wrestling Whisperer, and there's a specific technique Auden used in this match that I find very interesting. Let's take a listen.
The thing is, I had a big jump after I pulled Chris Hammond and nil. I think he would have beat me at that point. Because that was before I kind of figured out how to beat hookers. Because I finally understood how to supinate in on guys and stop the hook.
So what we hear Auden talking about firstly is the timeline of his confidence increasing for the match against Whisperer, but it sounds to me like the moment that really changed everything for him was when he learned how to stop a hook puller with supination. And I think he may be referring more specifically to a training session he had with Neil Pickup at Arm Wars. And this is a concept that is very important to understand. Oftentimes, whenever we think of what is most important in order to prevent someone from forcing you into a hook, we think about back pressure and pronation. And these tools will end up doing the bulk of the work in a lot of matches. But if the only pressures you are using to block a hook are back pressure and pronation, you are missing out on a huge opportunity, and that opportunity is supination. In order to understand why supination can actually be incredibly important when blocking a hook, we need to understand one of the most important principles in arm wrestling. And that principle is that whatever move you are trying to achieve, you should do the exact opposite of that move in order to set it up beforehand. In other words, if you want to bend your wrist against somebody during the match, you should actually hyperextend your wrist in the setup. Or if you want to pronate against somebody during a match, you should actually supinate during the setup. Now, this principle doesn't always work, but it does work in a lot of situations, one of which is blocking a hook. And if you want a more in-depth explanation of this, Devin has a great video that covers this topic called How to Set Up Your Top Roll. Here's what Devin says about supination.
A lot of times when we talk about supinating, we're talking about bringing the shoulder forward, but supinating can also be done while rising. Your ability to keep your thumb open and to even see your palm is going to make the opponent's hand not be as far around you. This is going to make your hand slide up their palm.
So one of the things about supination is that if you try to use it once your opponent has closed their hand and after they say go, you probably will just end up getting hooked. But during the setup portion of the match, there is no risk of being pinned. So something that would normally be very scary, like supinating against a hook puller, is now super chill. By supinating in the setup like Devin talks about, this will cause your hand to slip up your opponent's hand, which will decrease the depth of grip in their setup. Everything that the hook puller wants is depth in the setup. That depth is what is going to allow them to force you into the hook and make the match about arm strength. But if in the setup you incorporate supination by pivoting your entire body toward the pin pad, this will kill their depth of grip. And this will perfectly set you up for a reversal. If once the ready go happens, you are planning on using external shoulder rotation and pronation, this means you should actually use internal shoulder rotation and supination in the setup. Notice how in the setup in round 1 against Whisperer, Auden is totally supinating and fighting for center table side pressure. It almost looks like he's going to set up to try and hook Whisperer, but all of this is because he's setting up for the reversal. And as we know, this worked super well. Now sure, there ended up being a pretty large power gap in this match, so who knows if the setup even mattered that much. But you can see how uncomfortable Whisperer looks in the setup. It tends to really throw hook pullers off when top rollers are loading side pressure and supination against them. And that's exactly what we saw in this match. Now this is just a very basic overview of this whole concept, and it is certainly not comprehensive. If you want to be able to implement this concept as well as Auden does, you'll have to get on the table and put in those hours in order to master it.